This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is the show where 50-plussers and anybody else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes, or I think they call it now Apple Play. Type in Old Dog, spelled D-A-W-G, find our podcast, and subscribe. The following podcast is part 2 of a 2-episode podcast series.
I'm doing a lot of business without any assistance required from anybody, really. Now, do I have brokers that do business with me? Yes, I do. When you start owning a lot of property, they show up like swarms of flies around you. You know, they bring you everything.
Right.
And yes, I use them if it's helpful. But this is something that I use the term Johnny Lunch Bucket investor. That's kind of what I am. I'm a Johnny Lunch Bucket. You know, I had a job, I worked for wages, and I switched over to full-time investing. And so I could be in the category of a Johnny Lunch Bucket. We start out, we don't have any money. We have to supply our own oomph here. We supply our own labor because we don't have the money to pay for it. And we just follow through by finding these properties. And you can pretty much tell when you see with a trained eye now, you can pretty much tell when a property is in trouble. And sometimes I'll go, like if there's an out-of-town owner or something like that, you know, that gives me a real good in card there. But sometimes I'll go I'll find out who manages the property. And how do I do that? Well, I'll drive out there about 10 o'clock and I'll park down the street a ways and get a clipboard and I'll walk sort of up to the property. I'll be looking up at the power wires like I'm a power line guy. And maybe I'll see one of the renters standing out front watering her lawn or something, and I'll be looking up at the wires. And she'll be staring at me wondering what I'm doing. And when I get close to her, I say, I'm out here from PG&E. We're going to add another line. Oh, okay. I wondered what you were doing. And I say, oh, by the way, are these, do you know if these are rental properties? Well, yeah, she says, I rent here. I said, is there any vacancies? Well, she says, I don't know. Why don't you get a hold of Sunshine Management Company? They're down on Market Street. Oh, okay, I'll give them a call. You know, and you get information this way.
Gotcha.
This is what I call the Columbo style of investigating. You remember Peter Falk?
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
the old wrinkled raincoat. Just one more thing, ma'am. and he finds out his hand, and this is all common sense stuff. Now you don't know it when you start. But when I explain it to you and tell you, it is just kind of common sense, really.
And this sounds like this was a real transition for you, going from having all these multiple houses and then moving into this area.
Yeah, when I started going to the multiples, number one, a couple things happened. Number one, you don't have to go nearly as fast. A guy out there buying rentals, he's trying to get one after the other, and he's running into bank problems because he has too many mortgages and all this stuff. This type of investing like I'm talking about, we avoid banks, of course, altogether. But if I buy 7 or 8 units on one deal, that's good enough for a while till I get that fixed up. Then I'll go looking for another one. And but what you have now is, I told you, the unit price. That's a key figure in my business, the unit price. In that example I've already run by you with a $90,000 single house versus the same thing with a multiple setup being at 40, if I can rent my $90,000 house for $700 and the one I paid $40 for $700, can you begin to see the dorsal fin?
Right. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out.
Yeah. In other words, it's this unit price. I call it, rent to value ratio. In the old days, they used to say, realtors used to have this little 1% rule in the rental business. They'd say, well, if a house is $100,000, we got to get $1,000 a month rent. That's actually 12% annual, 1% a month. I have places that are double that, and even higher than double that. So if you can't, a blind man can make money when you get these ratios right, assuming you do the rest of it. But when you have a lesser priced asset, and yet the income for that asset is the same as one that costs twice as much, you see where you might make a little money.
Right.
Then you multiply that out times 6, 7, 8, or how many are on the property. You multiply that out. Well, when I transitioned into this type of property, and I spent time and got them fixed up, I usually estimated 18 to 24 months to go through these things and get them turned around. A great deal of it is on the outside, the looks of the property, the outside paint and so forth. But allow yourself 24 months or so. Every one of those properties have really good cash flow when you're done.
So did you start selling off your other 38 when you started to realize this?
Yes, I did. I did. It was 23. Yeah.
Oh, 23. Sorry about that.
I began to sell them off, yes. A couple of them I sold in big clumps, 10 at a time. I did a 1031 on a bunch of them and moved them. And yes, that's exactly what I did. I transitioned out of them. Now, that took a while, but I managed to do that. And when I got into the multiples, that's when I hit the home run.
Wow, that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Well, I used to drive over the grapevine here from Southern Cal, and then I'd either take Highway 5 or 99, and I used to see these like groups of houses on one lot, but I always thought, primarily because this is such an agricultural area, that it was like for seasonal employees.
Well, you might that's possible that's what you saw, because they build them just like that as well. These big farms have 10 of them in a row for the workers. That's not really what I'm referring to, but you could have seen that because they do have those. But these towns like you come up towards Stockton, in these outlying towns, Merced, all of these are beautiful towns to do what I do. Even Sacramento, it's gotten a little high priced. Sacramento was zoomed ahead. Sacramento in my town used to have about the same rents, and now they've really forged ahead at the capital. But I would suggest any of these, Williams, Willows, any of these towns off I-5 have oodles of these. These are kind of rural towns. Years ago, what happened and how they got built was a man would go in and he'd buy himself an acre or so and had a family home on the front there, and he had this acreage in the back, and maybe they had a victory garden back there for a few years, and then he said, I think I'll build a duplex back there for our retirement. So over the next 5-10 years, he'd build a duplex, and that one worked so well. He said, well, I think I can come in from the alley, maybe build another duplex. And a lot of these got built that way. And they got granny units built above the garage. A lot of garages, they took the pitch roof off and put a 2-bedroom up there and rented it out. A lot of these properties got built up that way. Chico, another town. Chico's got tons of these things. And they rent them to the college students, and really they mark them up much higher than I do, 70 miles down the road from me here. But this is a very good business, and we haven't even talked about the financing part and the lucrative part there yet, but and what you can do with these things. But the key here...
Yeah, I'd like to hear that part too, yeah.
Yeah, the key to start off with is the cash flow issue. You can buy these properties keeping the unit price down, keeping the rent-to-value ratio above 1.5, we'll say, which would be 18% annually, 1.5% interest per month. 18 annually, easy to achieve because you bought these things at a lower base cost per unit. That's how you achieve these numbers. And it's kind of like buying grapes in bunches, right? They're cheaper that way, or bananas or whatever. You buy them in bunches, and anything you buy in bunches, don't we think it ought to be cheaper if we buy a bunch?
Oh, sure.
And that applies to housing too. And so that's the name of the game. Now, a lot of people looks control an awful lot of what goes on here because people set their sights on the way something ought to look. And my mother always taught me that beauty is only skin deep, and that's very, very true of these houses. I mean, once you get out there, clean up these yards, paint the exterior, make things look nice and attractive, you change the whole complexion around. A person that wouldn't buy the property one day looks at it after you've cleaned it, oh my God, how'd you steal a bargain like this? Well, it wasn't when I got it. I turned it into this, And so a lot of people walk away. Now, what does that do? That eliminates competition. All of these seminars around the country, you got guys running around in motel rooms here. Buy single-family houses. Buy this. They're a great bargain. They're a great this, great that. And by the way, they are. But there's just no income when they have a mortgage on them. That's the problem. And then if you're just a regular guy at a job, you can only get 4 loans at the bank and they shut you off. Your investing days are gone. So you got a lot of restrictions. Now, I'm not knocking that method at all. I am not knocking it. I think the greatest investment in the world is a 3-bedroom, nice 3-bedroom 2-bath house. However, that investment needs to come after you have the money to pay for it, not in the beginning when you need cash flow, because it's not going to cash flow.
Exactly. All right. Well, wow, this is so fascinating, and I think that there's, this is again another sort of niche area that a lot of people, I'm sure, listening to this have heard, for sort of the first time. What would you say is sort of the one mistakes that that you happened in this process that you learned from and corrected and helped make it even more efficient for you?
Well, as I look back, and that's how you view things, I went along. It took me, maybe 6, 7, 8 years on these single houses. I went down that trail quite a long time before I switched over. And I suffered with not making any money. Now, these things grew a little in value, but that didn't change the cash flow very much. And so I had some, I had a little equity there, but, Safeway doesn't take equity when you want to buy groceries. So I went down the road quite a long time, 10 years, I guess, at least, buying those without ever thinking about moving toward this multiple thing. And I was searching really for some way to do better than what I was doing. And everybody says, well, you could sell half of them off, and if you make profit, pay off some of the others. Well, yeah, you can, but, financing and so forth. Also, along the way, I learned that if you're going to make any serious money in this business, you've got to stay away from all of the rules and regulations put on by banks, cities and counties with building departments, permits, and all of that sort of stuff. You got to stay away from that stuff because it's very costly. And they'll make money off of you, but you'll end up giving all the money away and you won't make any money. So, when you own older properties, now, by the way, when I say this, if you're in the city, you can't get away with a lot of stuff that I do in the country, we'll say. If I were going to replace windows in the city, somebody'd stop me in 2 or 3 minutes about a permit, right? But up here in my town, in some of these units up in the driveway, hidden back behind stuff, maybe a fence in the front, nobody even knows what I'm doing. Do I get a permit? No. Yeah, I'm absent-minded on the permit. I just kind of forget that. I'm the kind of a guy that would rather ask forgiveness than permission. So if I'm caught, then I'll get down on my hands and knees and ask forgiveness. Tell you I'll never do it again. But I might get by with 10 jobs before you catch me. Now, you won't pull that
I don't know
off.
if that's something I'd recommend to my listeners right now.
No, you might. No. We'll add a little laughing and humor to that. But there's some truth to it. You can do an awful lot when you own a property under the, improving your property. I mean, building departments won't come down on you. If you're working with a brand new house, building it for somebody, I mean, you got to be straight arrow with this thing. You got to get permits, sign-offs, and all that. When you own rental properties and you're the owner and you got your own little crew out there, nobody really pays that much attention to that. They say, well, what are you doing replacing that window? I says, well, because one of the tenants broke it. That's why.
Right.
Well, did you get I don't have time to get a permit. He broke it. I can't have a window open. And they just let it go. Mm-hmm. So there is a little leeway there when you own stuff.
Sure.
And you work yourself into this as you go. You know what I'm saying? Nobody knows all this stuff to begin with. I could have been a millionaire when I was 20 if I knew this then.
Yeah, really, right. Well, it's the school of hard knocks here. That's sometimes you learn the best lessons in. But okay, you mentioned sort of the biggest mistake. What would you say sort of the biggest success was?
Well, if you need, let me just say that if you're just a regular person and you continue with your job, you're a Johnny Lunch Bucket guy. You got a job and you want to keep it, and you want to invest in houses. I have no problem. I would not get into what I'm talking about here. Remember, I wanted to change careers. I wanted to be a full-time real estate guy, and you got to have money. Now, if you're on the job buying a house every couple of years, that's a great strategy for that type of person.
Right.
It depends on where you want to go, and people, when you start out, a lot of people don't know where they want to go. If you want to reach the mountaintop and get cash flow and all that, chances are you're going to need the right vehicle to take you there. It's going to be a four-wheel drive, hunker down vehicle to get you to the mountaintop. But if you're going to, just buy a regular little house here and there, you don't need that same vehicle. You're not interested perhaps in a career change. You just want a good, solid investment. There's nothing better than that. And so different strokes for different folks. It depends on what you want to do. If you need cash flow, and this is the mistake so many people make, they think buying houses are going to get them cash flow. I used to have them come and ask me, say, I'm on my fourth house. I need more income. Where do I get more income? Well, you don't. Well, and also you have to wait around a little bit for equity. That's another game, and if there's no appreciation for 5 or 6 years, you're just sitting there. And that happens to us. It happened during the downturn. So if changing career was my purpose. That's what I wanted to do. And I was trying to figure out how I could do it and how I could give up my telephone payday and live off my rentals. That's what I was trying to figure out how to do. And it didn't happen until I did these multiples. So if you need cash flow, you better think different than single-family houses that have a 90 or 85% mortgage on them, because you're not going to get it, period.
Right. Or even the 75%, you're still, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah. It gets worse, in the high marketplaces. And by the way, people who want to do what I'm doing, I think I may have mentioned this to you, if you can smell salt water, you're in the wrong place.
In other words, getting closer to the coast, it's gonna be ridiculous.
That's okay for playing golf down there.
Right.
But I always tell people, I want to be an investor. I want cash flow, but I don't want to move.
Right.
Well, I can't. I can't help you. There's no way I can help you. If you want to become an investor, if you want to become fairly well off, financial security and all that, you may probably have to make some sacrifices early on.
Right. Our audience, Jay, are folks that are 50 years of age and older. They're starting real estate later in life than you did.
Yes.
And, for those folks that are looking at, generating some cash flow, even in their retirement, or maybe as they're approaching their retirement, because they anticipate there's going to be a shortage of funds there. What would you advise for those folks?
Well, I still would advise small multiple unit properties. They wouldn't have to necessarily be the fixer, rough looking properties, but people, if they're 50 or so, Maybe they have something in a retirement. Well, if they have one of these Roths that can invest or something like that, they could put money into real estate and either out of money from pension or even borrowing it. I'm assuming that someone who's 50 probably has a little more wherewithal than I had at 20. And even if they don't, they're probably capable of arranging a deal. In other words, most of them think of, well, I just want to dabble my toe in the water, and I'll start with one. Well, you don't have enough years left to start with one if you want cash flow for retirement. You're using up your runway. And I know this comes across as guy says, well, what do you mean I'm using my runway? Well, you only got so many years where you can be active and help yourself a little and maybe manage these properties and learn the ropes. That means we've got to buy the right property to begin with if you want this property to generate income for your retirement. That's what you got to do.
Right. That's great. That's great advice. Great advice.
And with mine, I have the world's best retirement plan there is, and I'm in the middle of it because I've sold most of these properties we're talking about, and I carry paper. And carrying paper is the best retirement plan in the world.
You're the banker, right?
I'm the banker, and I'm secured by properties that I ran myself for years. I know them well. They're the best. I'd rather have my money in the properties or my security in the properties than I would in the bank vault, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah. You've got something tangible there, definitely.
I do. So it's a great way, and I live off notes and that sort of thing. And that's what you do if you have a successful career with this kind of stuff. And but I would advise the older people. I do advise them because I get the same request. Mm-hmm. What do I do now? I've got a little money coming in, but it's not enough. I need to supplement. And if they're interested in real estate, they've got to get. There's no use of getting something in real estate that's not going to really do them any good. If they say, I want extra money for retirement, then they need to sit down and make a little graph out and plot it out, whatever they're going to do, and see if that thing shows that they'll be able to do that. If you're just guessing at it, you're letting time go by there, and you don't even know whether you're investing in the right thing or not. Maybe you shouldn't invest at all. So the property makes all the difference in the world. For young people, you can make a lot of mistakes. You can buy the wrong deals and change over and get into the right deal. But older folks, they don't have that luxury. They have got to zero in on something that is going to work and shows it will work right from the get-go. And if you don't have that, it's kind of slim pickings out there another 10 years, 10 or 15 years,
Right.
And I tell people that you can still buy. A lot of people buy 6 units, 8 units, nicer units than I did when I was buying mine. But those are good units, and they're income. And as long as you can get a down payment, and maybe they make a few bucks, you provide your own management. Maybe, it's pretty easy for a healthy person, 8 or 10 units to run those themselves, do the gardening, do whatever. You'll save yourself. It costs about, here's a figure you want to underline, it costs about 45% to operate a rental property. in the multiple category. 45%, which includes the management, the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, the repairs, and so forth. 45% of your dollar coming in from rents will go for that purpose. That means you have 55% left over. Now, if you've got a debt service there, a mortgage for 50%, now we have 5% left over. That would be your share. Pretty skinny down there on the average. That's the average finance transaction, and that might be with a 20% down and 80% mortgage. And today we're closer to that than any time in history because the interest rates are so cheap.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it's going to cost you that much money. And somebody said 45%. My God, I only pay 10%. We'll say 8 or 10% for taxes. The insurance, that's maybe 6%. Yes, that's right. Well, where in the hell is he coming up with 45? Well, 45 is the overall total. That includes a vacancy loss, credit losses. When you run income property year after year, you're going to have a credit loss, and you're going to have time turned down for vacancies.
Right.
If you don't figure that in the mix, you're kidding yourself.
Right.
So that's in the mix. And then I always allow 10% management, and I allow 10% for maintenance, and I allow 5% for repairs. Now, what's the difference? Mm-hmm. Well, maintenance is where you paint the building, you upkeep, you cut the grass, you make it so that it will earn what it's currently earning in the rental market, so that it stays right there and doesn't deteriorate. Repairs are where, guy walks up to the door and the handle comes off in his hand. That's not maintenance, that's a repair. So you got repairs to make. Now, if you can do those things as an owner, like manage your own property where I've allowed 10%, if you can do your own repairs except for the parts and material, and that breaks down to about 70-30, 70% of that is labor, 30% is material. If you can handle that as an owner, there's some pretty doggone good savings that will go in your pocket for cash flow by doing that.
It's great. Great, man. This has been such a valuable interview. So many good points, and just unveiling this this new niche for a lot of folks that are going to hear this maybe for the first time is just fantastic.
Well, this is a niche that a lot of people can do if they would really make an effort to do it, and it's one that will truly take a poor boy and make him rich at the end of the day if he follows through with it. Sure.
Well, we've kind of we ran a little bit longer than we anticipated. In fact, we're probably going to make this into a two-parter here because we ran a little bit over. But right now we have what we call our Wrap It Up. And this is where I ask you a series of quick questions. And you give me some quick responses there of resources that you've used that are valuable to you, and then we'll go through that, and then we'll close with some closing information. But if you're ready, we'll go ahead and
let's go.
Wrap it up. Okay, all right. Favorite real estate book?
Probably my favorite is by Robert Kent. How to invest in real estate, how to get rich investing in real estate. Out of print now. It's out of print. You might find it at a used book place. Robert Kent, he was an attorney from New Jersey that went full-time landlording, Boston area. And Bill Nickerson. Now, Bill Nickerson was my friend.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah,
Bill and I invested a lot. I worked with Bill. I knew him very well. Bill and Lucille, his wife, they're both gone now, but that book is another favorite of mine as far as real estate goes. Several real estate books, but in the business world, books that...
Yeah, what would your favorite business book be?
Grinding It Out by Ray Kroc. The Building of McDonald's.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, good one.
That is a great book. It's called Grinding It Out, and I'm not talking about hamburgers. And then one other one by Gene Autry. Back in the Saddle Again by Gene Autry, another great business book. As you may know, Gene Autry was the singing cowboy.
Yeah. I know that. I don't know about a lot of our audience, but...
No, they won't even. Ken Burns just had a bunch of Nashville and the old Western people on a series here. When I saw Gene Autry and his horse, he was big when I was a kid.
Oh, sure.
It's about him building his real estate empire and his TV stations and radio. He was one of the first guy to buy FM stations in L.A. And you could give them away back when, because they only went for about 50 miles range. And nobody wanted them until they discovered the music is much better on the FM. So anyway, quite a story by Gene Autry. I like that. That about covers it, I think.
Oh, that's great. Some great recommended books there. Awesome. And I know you're not a big computer guy, so you can.
No.
I don't know if you ever use, have websites you use in your business or that you like to go to.
Well, no, I don't. I have my own, of course, but I don't.
Okay,
I
no
don't
problem.
do much
No
with that.
problem. How about do you have? Let's see. This is another one too. It might not have like apps on your phone, for example.
No, I don't.
No?
The answer
Okay.
is none.
Okay.
None of the above.
Okay, no problem. That's okay.
And I want to make a point to say to you this, and I found this in seminars. Don't let your smartphone dumb you down.
Oh man, you got that right.
Now, what I mean by that is people get to relying on all of these apps and all of these things that you can get through electronics. I have found that in the real estate business, you can do your best when you are dealing with people, not apps, not lists, not anything, because once the general public has a list, then the genie's out of the bottle. In other words, competition gets fierce. You're competing with thousands of more people. If you can stay locked in with a seller of a property or the owner, if you're a reverse of that, and deal with people, there was a broker once said, you don't dance with real estate, you dance with people. And that is absolutely the truth. So anyway, for what it's worth.
Hey, I think that's good. No, I'm going to include that in there. I think that's a really, really good point. And you gave me a quote there, but I don't know if I would say that's your favorite quote. Do you have a favorite quote?
Well, I wrote down as a favorite quote, I think one of I have several.
Mm-hmm. We got to narrow it down to one. Think you could do it?
I loved the one, the saying by Colonel Sanders. And if you knew Colonel Sanders' story, it's quite a story. But he said when he had a visitation for an award, actually a presidential award, a little trophy around his neck, he said, a man needs to stay busy. He will rust out long before he wears out. If you know the story of the colonel, he was dead broke at an old age when he built his empire of finger-licking good chicken.
He built everything, after he was an old dog.
He did. He was selling chicken out of the back end of his car, or the spices.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's great.
So, and a quote on a personal level, you use it or throw it away, but it's one of my own. I said, I didn't invent the fix-up strategy. I simply added on a turbocharger to the old lawnmower.
I like that. I like that, Jay. That's a great one. Maybe we'll keep them both. Well, okay. Well, here is the last one. This is sort of the clincher here. And if you lost absolutely everything, and knowing what you know today, and all you have in your hand is $1,000 in cash, what would you do with that $1,000 to relaunch your real estate investing business?
I would use that and keep looking until I found a seller motivated with reason enough to take what I'm going to offer for a multiple unit property. And I would look towards a person who has great reason to sell. I bought a property outside of town 5 miles with 5 units kind of on a hillside lot. And because it was on a hillside lot slanted, I didn't require going and looking at the units. I bought it, I knew what I wanted. The price was right. I bought it, and I didn't even go inside the units because when you look at rough units, dirty units, they're going to look the same on the inside as they do on the outside. It'll be a match. But I did ask this guy, I said, I want to put a little fencing here, and I need to know where the corner of the property is. So if you could show me, it was kind of in manzanita brush. I said, if you could just show me that, I don't need to see inside. I mean, that's all I need. He says, I am not going out to the property ever again. This is what the seller told me. And I never had an answer like that.
Wow.
Then I says, well, my gosh, why not? He says, the guy in the yellow house, the second house there on the slope, he said if he ever saw me on the property again, he'd kill me.
Gee whiz.
And so I said, well, I'll accept that reason. That'll be good. Now, by the way, I bought the property. I never had any problem with the guy.
No way. I was going to say, what'd you do? Come out there with a bunch of policemen or something?
No. I mean, the guy stayed with me another 6 or 7 months. He treated me right.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. What a great story.
Have you ever picture this in your mind? You got a stick in your hand and you go to a beehive and you start stirring that beehive on a warm, sunny, warm morning about 10 a.m. You know what's going to happen, don't you?
Yeah, they're going to go after you.
That's kind of the way I pictured this deal.
Right.
When you don't know landlording, you get yourself in a lot of hot water. My greatest claim to fame, and I'll tell you here at the last, is my ability to landlord. I have a lot of property skills and buying and trading and all that. I have all of that. My landlording skills put me in the millionaire class.
Well, I'll tell you right now, Jay, we're going to have you back just to talk to us about landlording next time. I'll tell you, because that's an area where a lot of investors really struggle. So we are dying to hear that one. Yeah.
They do, yeah.
Well, Jay, I'm sure there's folks listening here that would like to know how to get a hold of you if they can, or find out at least about your books and what you do and that kind of thing. What's sort of the best way for folks to reach you? Well,
one of the way, I have an 800 line. Mm-hmm. It's 1-800 toll-free line, 1-800-722-2550. And in this case, if they would just say on this program, so I'll know where it came from, in case they get a recording, they may. I have Kathy answers the phone in the morning. I try to get it when it rings in the afternoon. But anyway, that's my 800. My website is www.fixerjay.com.
That's great. And that's got all your books listed there too, right? Or yeah.
It has the books, and of course they're on Amazon and they're on Barnes and Noble, but right now, the books that we talked about early on, they'd run into that $300 book. They can call me. I'll sell them a book directly.
Gotcha. Well, Jay, this has been great. We have a tradition, though, on this show, and I don't know if you...
Yeah.
And, we're called the Old Dogs REI Network, so we like to have all of our old dog guests close us out with their best old hound dog howl. And so are you up for that one? I love it. That was a good one. That was definitely a good old dog howl there. Well, it's been great having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, Bill, it's been a pleasure, and I hope somebody can use the advice.
Oh, I'm sure they will. And I also want to thank all our old dog listeners out there, too, for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we really appreciate it. Now, please note, everything that Jay talked about today can be accessed in our detailed show notes on the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog. And you're going to look for the episode with Jay DeCima, which is actually going to be, looks like 2 episodes here. So this is going to be great. That is the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.